Hello, you're watching TVP World News. I'm Zalewski. Russian leader Vladimir Putin will not be attending peace talks he had previously called for in Istanbul. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zalewski is in Turkey and will instead meet with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Also in Turkey is our correspondent Alex Kadir. Alex, hello, and can you tell us what is next for these talks? There has been a lot of uncertainty surrounding them.
Yeah, more than a little bit of uncertainty, a lot of uncertainty about exactly what will happen next. We heard the Kremlin announcing a junior delegation, including a presidential advisor, the deputy foreign minister, and a deputy defense minister would be sent to Istanbul. But Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, was very clear. He said he will only meet with Vladimir Putin. In the meantime, he will be in Ankara. Zelensky will be meeting with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the next few hours. And this is still a moving story. It is still unclear. We heard President Trump yesterday saying, well, maybe I'll go to Istanbul, maybe not, I'm not sure yet. And now he's saying, maybe I will go tomorrow. So this remains a moving picture. We've heard leaders from all over the world really putting pressure on Vladimir Putin, the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte saying now it's for Russia to make an effort. Even the Brazilian president, who was in Moscow on the 9th of May for the World War II historical moment, anniversary I should say, he put pressure on Vladimir Putin. The US suggesting that Putin goes to these talks and agrees a 30-day ceasefire. If he doesn't, there remains a threat from Germany, from France, the UK and others that they will ramp up sanctions against Russia. How effective that will be, we will only tell over time. But certainly for now, we have the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in Antalya. We have President Zelensky in Ankara, a junior delegation from Russia heading to Istanbul. At the moment, no high-level talks.
So as we can see, this is very much a developing story, and we'll be bringing you more as the situation continues to unfold. For the time being, Alex Kadir was with us straight from Turkey. Alex, thank you very much for joining us. Now we're moving on. As Russian and Ukrainian delegations are set to meet in Turkey to hold peace talks, Moscow launched over 100 drones on Ukraine overnight. Our correspondent Oz Kateji is in Kiev and has more. So Oz, can you tell us about the situation? Clearly, Moscow may be talking a lot about being insistent on agreeing on some sort of peace, and yet its actions actually seem to suggest otherwise.
Good morning, Jonasz. Well, yeah, you are entirely right. There is no semblance of a ceasefire here in Ukraine, no sign that one is coming anytime soon either. 100 drones launched overnight by the Russian armed forces against the territory of Ukraine. The Ukrainian Air Force say they intercepted 62 of those drones. However, there were fatalities and injuries across the country. 5 people killed, 29 injured in Russian attacks across Ukraine over the last 24 hours. 3 of those people were killed in Sumy in northern Ukraine. 1 person killed in Kharkiv. 1 person killed in Donetsk. There were further attacks in the Kherson and Dnipropetrovsk regions, bringing those injuries up to 29 in all of those regions in total. So, as you can see, while the 2 delegations may be arriving in Turkey, potentially for talks, still no clarity on if talks are going to happen at all. Ukrainian civilians are continuing to die here day in, day out, Jonasz, in these Russian attacks on cities, towns, villages across the length and breadth of Ukraine. From the north to the south, east to the west, Russia is targeting, bombing Ukrainian cities and killing Ukrainian civilians.
And it is important to actually emphasize this, that the situation is far from stable in Ukraine. And when it comes to bringing things to the table, the only thing that Russia has brought so far is violence. Oz Kateji, straight from Kiev, thank you very much for bringing us this latest update. And now we're moving on to our next story. I'm still cautiously optimistic, said NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, ahead of the Ukraine-Russia peace talks in Turkey. Rutte also added that the next step towards securing a ceasefire has to be made by Russia.
Ukraine is ready to commit to a ceasefire and immediate negotiations. That's absolutely clear. The ball is now clearly in Russia's court. They have to explain what they are doing, why they are here or not, and with what team or whatever. But let's make sure that we all understand that the ball is in their court. Ukraine is wanting to start the negotiations as soon as possible. And as I said before, it is thanks to the Americans and President Trump that the deadlock has been broken. It's now up to the Russians to make sure they take the next steps necessary.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said there is no military solution to the war between Russia and Ukraine. Speaking before the NATO summit in Turkish resort city of Antalya, Rubio added that the conflict can be resolved only through diplomatic efforts.
There is no military solution to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This war is going to end not through a military solution, but through a diplomatic one. And the sooner an agreement can be reached on ending this war, the less people will die and the less destruction there will be. The big issue on everyone's mind is what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. The President of the United States has been abundantly clear he wants the war to end. He's open to virtually any mechanism that gets us to a just, enduring, and lasting peace. And that's what he wants to see. The President has just submitted a budget for $1 trillion of defense spending, which is unheard of, it's unparalleled. And it's not just spending money, it's spending money on the capabilities that are needed for the threats of the 21st century.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has met with German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul. The two officials are participating in the NATO meeting in Antalya, but have met separately on the sidelines of the event. Rubio and Wadephul have discussed the latest efforts to bring the war in Ukraine to an end. Another major theme is the need of European nations to drastically increase defense spending. In yesterday's address to the German parliament, the new German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said that under his leadership Germany will build the strongest conventional army in Europe. Merz has also said that his administration wants US-European unity on Ukraine. Poland is aiming to improve its access to US-provided weapons, a move reportedly supported by Washington, according to the Polish Deputy Defense Minister Paweł Zalewski. According to the official, gaining access to the military technology and arms is a slow and complicated process and could be improved. The move reportedly received full support from both the US Congress and the Pentagon. Less regulations would be beneficial to Poland, which had earlier on been described as a model ally by members of the US administration. Warsaw already spends nearly 5% of its GDP on defense, with Washington expecting other European countries to bring their expenditures up to a similar level. The US is also reportedly not expecting Poland to send troops to war-torn Ukraine, said the deputy minister following meetings at the Pentagon on Wednesday. Moreover, despite recent talks of Washington withdrawing its troops from Europe, Zalewski says Poland will not be affected by such moves. During his 4-day tour of the Middle East, US President Donald Trump met with Ahmed al-Sharaa, the interim president of Syria. The meeting was thought impossible by most analysts until recently. Al-Sharaa, whose forces ended the decades-long reign of the Assad family in December 2024, was described by Trump as a tough guy with very strong past. The Syrian interim president had a $10 million bounty on his head, lifted also in December 2024, for being a member of an Islamist group known as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, an affiliate organization of Al-Qaeda. Al-Sharaa severed ties with the organization in 2016. The two presidents were joined by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who hosted them in Riyadh, and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan over the phone. The meeting follows Donald Trump's vow to lift all sanctions on Syria, announced on Tuesday during his trip. Referring to Europe's and Canada's defense expenditures up to this point, Diane Francis, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, said that, and I quote, "They've been freeloading off the US for many years." She added that just spending more money on defense isn't enough to adjust to a NATO with a diminished US presence.
They've been freeloading off the U.S. for many, many decades, let's face it. So has Canada. they've got to ratchet up their spending. They're trying to do it. It's not easy, and just spending is not enough. You have to put together military armed forces with lines of command, with facilities, with equipment, with training. All kinds of things have to happen. So yes, they're moving in that direction, and they have to, because the Americans are not going to support NATO much longer to the extent that they have, and that's very, very critical.
Is being monitored above and beneath the surface, said Swedish Minister of Defense Paweł Jonsson. Speaking on our show On the Record with Aron Dahmen, Jonsson went on to say that Sweden is working closely with its international partners to keep Russia's activities at bay.
We monitor the situation on the Baltic Sea very closely, and we have assets and capabilities working on the surface. We operate with our 4 submarines. We're stepping up now to having 5 submarines, and we work in the air as well, both with our intelligence gathering and our radar surveillance capabilities. So we have a good situational awareness, and we see, of course, that the Baltic Sea has become more important for Russia. At any time on the Baltic Sea now, there's about 4,500 vessels operating the whole time, and Russia is more dependent on the Baltic Sea now as well. So what we've predominantly been focusing also in identifying fleets that are connected with the shadow fleet as well, in order to identify more of those and put those on the sanction list. And then we, of course, follow the incidents as well. There's been about 15 cables all in all through 4 major incidents who's been affected by this. And we take note of this, and we increase our awareness and situation awareness. We collaborate very closely also internationally among the countries around the Baltic Sea in order to mitigate the risk that this will happen further on in the future.
And to hear more about the security of Europe, I invite you to visit our YouTube channel, where you will find the latest episode of On the Record. NATO troops are carrying out a series of drills in order to test out their collective capabilities in land, cyber and airborne domains, as well as to verify their deterrence capabilities. These exercises, known as Griffin Lightning 25, also provide an insight into how quickly the alliance would be able to deploy forces should Article 5 be invoked. Zuzanna Jurek reports from Estonia.
16,000 troops have gathered in Estonia for the Griffin Lightning 25 exercises, organized by Multinational Corps Northeast. These exercises aim to test out the operational readiness, the speed of deployment, as well as the capabilities of the Multinational Command Corps in a simulated Article 5 environment. Additionally, the aim is to test out the synchronicity of command between the different multinational forces. The British command stationed in southern Estonia offered a glimpse into some of the challenges such a multinational command has to face.
It's just understanding how other militaries work and their own tactics and procedures. And you can read them in a book, but actually you don't really actually understand it until you come out here and sort of work them through the problems.
Additionally, as questions loom over the speed of deployment of potential armed forces should a provocation from Russia or Belarus occur, the French command, also participating in these exercises, offered a glimpse into the timelines as well as the personnel numbers which we could expect to be deployed at immediate notice.
We came in with multiple way of transport, mainly railways for heavy equipment, but also by aircraft. And in 2 weeks, we are fully integrated, operable, and combat ready.
With these exercises unfolding for the remainder of May, it is hoped that the troops will continue to implement the lessons learned from previous combats which they've participated in, as well as the theatre of war in Ukraine, in order to test out the strength of capabilities, strategic as well as technical capabilities, ahead of potential clashes with adversaries. For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
And that's all for now. Thank you for watching, and please stay with us here on TVP World.